Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here and welcome back to another Division video, and in today's video we are going to be revisiting my favourite weapon, the Urban MDR. I've already done a number of videos surrounding this weapon, a review of the gun itself, a couple of gear sets that I built specifically with the MDR in mind, namely the Firecrest set and the Alpha Crest set, although the latter won't work in 1.6 because exotic weapon talents don't pass with Alpha Bridge. Anyway, that's not important. The reason we are revisiting it today is because in patch 1.6, the weapon has been considerably buffed. The base damage has seen a 65% increase, and the unique talent damage boost has also been upped by 8%. So with all that in mind, the question is it now any good? Well, let's take a look. If you guys enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated, and comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Maybe you guys have got it yourself and you've been testing it out in the PTS. Either way, let me know. Now, as a super quick recap, the Urban MDR as it exists in patch 1.5 is an interesting weapon. There's really nothing else like it in the game, partly why I like it so much, but the main issue with it is that the base damage is just too low to make it really viable. If you want to get any sort of mileage out of it, you have to heavily spec around it, and even then, it's still not as effective as if you just swapped it out for something like a G36, a lightweight M4, or an LVOAC. However, now, with the considerable boost to base damage, it can actually output some pretty decent numbers, to the point where you can actually take out high-level AI opponents relatively quickly, and even in PvP, in the right sort of engagements, you can definitely see some decent results. I've actually been running with this quite a bit in Last Stand, but I'll speak a bit more about that in a second. First up, it's important to realise that the MDR, despite the fact that it's an assault rifle, shouldn't really be compared to the G36, LVOAC, M4, or any other automatic offerings for that matter. Obviously they're all ARs, so they have a tendency to get lumped together, but in truth the MDR is closer to something like a Scar H, Police MK17, or even an SVD. And it's important to remember that when thinking about the damage. See, the newly buffed MDR is stronger than before, that goes without saying. I mean, it physically outputs more damage, plain and simple. But when trying to ascertain whether or not it's good enough just yet, that's a little more complicated. Were the MDR to be as powerful as some of the top tier ARs, when you factor in its precision and its range, then if it was as potent as a G36, then it would be borderline broken. In fact, it would basically be like what the blind rifle was back when I tested it at E3 last year. A lot of fun, but a little bit too powerful to the point where it makes everything seem like a joke. So if you grab the weapon as it is, and you use it without factoring in the exotic talent, then it does still feel a little bit lackluster. And in those situations, you would of course again be better defaulting to one of the usual AR candidates. However, when you factor in the distracted talent that gives you an 18% damage boost to targets with status effects, up from the previous 10%, then it comes into its own. But the only issue with that is that it once again makes the weapon a little too situational for general use. Again, if you really want to use this, you have to spec for it. Perhaps not quite as drastically as before, sure, but it's not the sort of weapon you can just grab irrespective of your build. I've spent some time trying out a few different gear set options, namely Firecrest, Seeker, Sentry and Predators. All of them are viable options to use with this gun. Firecrest is a given, as you can also stack an additional 15% damage on top when targets are on fire, a great combo provided you have a turret and or incendiary grenades, which obviously isn't always the case. Seeker obviously doesn't come with any sort of status effect talents, but what it does have is the 200% headshot damage multiplier, so if you get into the habit of double tapping the body and shifting up to the head, then this isn't actually too bad, and obviously throw in some status effects by means of grenades, flashbang and other skills, and you have some nice synergy there. Sentry is also good, similar sort of setup to Seeker, but it requires a little bit more precision. So for this, I would say it heavily depends on your aim and your playstyle. If you're playing on console, while hitting headshots isn't exactly difficult, during the heat of battle you might not get the most out of it. Whereas Predator's Mark, this is probably one of the easiest wins. 10 shots on the same target to make it bleed, and the bleed is a status effect, therefore allowing you to take advantage of the talent. This is of course a great pairing for the MDR in patch 1.5, because based on the way the weapon exists in that version of the game, it often takes more than 10 bullets to kill a target, so you invariably proc the bleed and take advantage of it. However, in patch 1.6, with the damage boost, that's not always the case, so you might find yourself only getting mileage out of this when fighting some of the big guys or the bosses, but regardless, pretty decent. Definitely one to consider for PvP, because the added bleed effect will obviously come in handy. And speaking of PvP, going back to my Last Stand tales for a moment, from my experience, the MDR, given the way that it fires and the range advantage, is great for planned attacks. In other words, when you know you're going to get into a fight and you plan for it, and you engage in the proper way, then when you're in this situation, you can definitely get some great results with the weapon. However, if you're caught off guard, someone runs around a corner and starts spraying at you, then you're going to be outgunned. So all in all, the takeaway for me with this weapon is that yes, quite obviously it's better than before. Is it perfect? Not yet. Could it do with a further buff still? Perhaps, ever so slightly. I feel like you could probably boost the base damage a tiny bit to make the gun useful in times where status effects aren't possible, especially when you consider that status effects aren't quite as effective as they used to be. They don't last as long, and there are diminishing returns now, so for situations like that, then being able to fall back on the raw weapon power would be quite nice. But either way, it's definitely still a fun weapon to use, and contrary to how it was before, it's certainly something you can pick up right now and actually do some damage with. So if you guys haven't got it, then it's worth going after, because if you're looking for a change of pace, then it's certainly fun to use. And of course, if you guys are playing in patch 1.5 and you haven't got access to the PTS, and you want to know how to get this, as a reminder, it comes from survival caches, but if you wait until patch 1.6, it will also drop from exotic caches or the weekly proficiency caches. Those are the ones that you can of course get from the legendary missions, so there'll of course be more ways for you to get this weapon. Either way, that's it for the time being. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.